When most of us hear the term martial arts, our minds probably jump straight to high-flying kicks and disciplined dojos. But what if I told you that's just scratching the surface? The real story is so much bigger, so much older, and way more complex than you probably think. So let's dive in and unpack the incredible history behind these ancient practices.
All right, to kick things off, we're going to start with a real curveball. We're going to challenge a really basic assumption about what martial arts even are and where that name actually comes from. The answer is probably going to surprise you.
Seriously, just for a second, what's the first image that pops into your head? I'm willing to bet that for a lot of you, it's a scene that's rooted in East Asian culture. Maybe something kind of like this?
Yeah, a super familiar sight, right? Rows of kids in their white uniforms practicing Taekwondo. This became a classic American after-school activity, and it really shaped how whole generations of us have understood the term. But, and this is a big but, that's just one tiny piece of a giant global puzzle.
Okay, so get this. The term martial art itself, it doesn't come from Asia at all. It's actually Latin. It literally means the arts of Mars, the Roman god of war. And it was first used way, way back in the 1550s to describe European combat systems, like fencing. The connection we make with Asian disciplines, that came much, much later.
And this right here just perfectly shows that the human urge to create organized fighting systems is universal, and it's ancient. On the left, you got a fresco of boxers from Minoan Crete that's over 3,500 years old. On the right, a modern Aikido class in Japan. The practice spans thousands of years and entire continents.
So let's really dig in and see just how deep and how global these roots actually go.
Check this out. This is one of the earliest depictions of systematic combat training that we know of. And it's not from China or Japan, it's from a tomb in Beni Hassan, Egypt, from around 3400 BCE. We're talking over 5,000 years ago. And you can see it right there in the paintings. Organized wrestling with all kinds of different holds and techniques.
I mean, this timeline really puts everything into perspective. We see organized wrestling in Egypt thousands and thousands of years ago. Then you've got boxing showing up in the ancient Greek Olympic Games. Around that same time, over in China, the Warring States period is leading to this incredible explosion in martial strategy, Sun Tzu's Art of War. And by 200 CE, we're seeing the first records of what would become the martial arts of India. So the big takeaway here is, this is a human story, not just a regional.
So that begs the question, right? How did the Asian martial arts specifically, which totally dominate how we see things today, become this massive global phenomenon? Well, that's what we're going to look at next.
Well, the first seeds were planted back in the 1800s as trade opened up. But for folks in the West, it was mostly just a foreign curiosity. The real game changer, the real catalyst, was after World War II and the Korean War. You had thousands of American GIs stationed in Japan, Korea, and China. They saw arts like judo and karate firsthand, and when they came back home, they brought that knowledge with them.
And then, Hollywood poured gasoline on the fire. Bruce Lee explodes onto the scene in Enter the Dragon and becomes a global icon practically overnight. The TV show Kung Fu brought martial arts philosophy into American living rooms every single week. Then the Karate Kid comes along and makes it a relatable story for a whole new generation. From there, it was off to the races with stars like Chuck Norris and Jean-Claude Van Damme, all leading up to movies like The Matrix, which completely changed Hollywood action by seamlessly blending in that Hong Kong style.
When you step back, you can see this clear pattern emerge. First, a style is seen as exotic and mysterious. Then, movies and TV make it popular and cool. Pretty soon, local dojos and academies start popping up, which makes it familiar. And then finally, it just becomes normal. It's just another integrated part of our culture, like gymnastics or soccer. We've seen this cycle repeat with everything from karate to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But hey, if we only talk about the physical techniques, the punches and kicks, we're missing like half the story. So let's explore the philosophical ideas that are so central to so many of these arts.
A huge concept, especially in Chinese arts, is something called qi, or qi. You can think of it as the body's fundamental life force, its core energy. The whole idea is that to develop real skill, you can't just train your muscles, you have to cultivate your qi. For many of us in the West, this is the root of what we think of as the spiritual side of martial arts.
And this idea of energy leads to a really key distinction between hard and soft techniques. Hard techniques are all about meeting force with force, a direct counter-strike, a powerful block. But soft techniques, they're about redirecting an attacker's energy, using their own force against them with things like throws, trips, and joint locks. This isn't just a physical difference, it's a completely different philosophy. Okay, Now, this is a really crucial point. You know that popular idea that martial arts and Zen Buddhism are these ancient, inseparable partners? Well, it turns out that's largely an invented tradition, a pretty modern construction. As the scholar William Powell points out here, while there were warrior monks in history, that deep spiritual connection we see in the movies was mostly shaped in the 20th century, mixing some Buddhist concepts with things like nationalism and modern philosophy.
So, after all this history, all this cultural exchange and philosophy, what do martial arts actually look like today? Let's take a look at the modern arena. Well, we see a massive evolution into sports. Ancient arts like boxing and wrestling are now huge, regulated Olympic events. Traditional styles have been standardized for competitions. And then, of course, there's mixed martial arts, which basically threw techniques from dozens of traditions into a cage to see what really worked, creating a brand new hybrid sport. Even Hollywood keeps evolving, now drawing heavily on Filipino martial arts for its super realistic fight scenes.
And that evolution, it never stops. A perfect example is tricking. It's a pretty new discipline that popped up in the late 90s and just exploded online. It's this incredible blend of martial arts kicks, gymnastics flips, and parkour movements, and it's all focused on aesthetic expression, not fighting. It's just a testament to the endless creativity that's possible. So, from ancient Egyptian wrestling to modern internet-fueled hybrids, one thing is clear. Martial arts have always adapted. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. As our world keeps changing, what new forms, what new philosophies, and what new sports will emerge from these timeless traditions? Really makes you wonder what comes next, doesn't it?